KZSU-FM Stanford, welcome to another edition of Hearsay Culture. My name is Dave Levine. I'm a professor at Elon University School of Law and affiliate scholar at the Center for Internet and Society at Stanford Law School. We're going way outside the box today, folks. In 265 interviews, I've had exactly 2 music directly oriented interviews. Let's make it 3 today with the new band Bad Penny. We are joined by 3 members of Bad Penny: drummer Jules Rodino, bass player Danny Miranda, and singer and songwriter, I think, is that fair, Mike Holtzman. The band has formed within the last, about 6 to 12 months from what I know, dropping 3 singles, including one that is going to drop Friday, January 29th, the same day that this show airs, called Lose Myself. The band is a very interesting hard rock supergroup because it's made up of 3 professional musicians in addition to Danny Miranda as well as Jules Rodino. And the band is led and what I think was formed by Mike Holtzman, who has a background in public relations and diplomacy. The band spans, I think, several genres of music from what I've heard so far, focusing heavily on hard rock, but it also has a new ballad that we'll play a little bit of later on. And most interestingly, perhaps for Hearsay Culture fans, the band has been recording all of these songs remotely. I am looking at a Zoom screen right now. We are recording via Zoom, and there are 4 individuals who are in separate places, and I'll actually ask where you are, and they have done their recording the same way. Knowing Mike for quite a while as I have, and we've talked about this band, it struck up to me, my own thinking and just my knowledge of music, that bands ranging from Simon and Garfunkel to the Beatles recorded songs towards the end of their careers separately for reasons that were more about personality differences and kind of being sick of each other. This is a really opposite model in that COVID, of course, has forced individuals across a whole range of industries, including music, to adapt very quickly. And so we've seen this kind of adaptation occurring in a variety of areas. I have had on the show Dave King from the Bad Plus several years ago, and as a jazz fan and aficionado, I've been enjoying streaming the Village Vanguard from my home in Greensboro, North Carolina, but of course that's hardly ideal. On the other hand, there might be benefits, and we're going to talk about those today, from being able to create music and add to our culture in ways that previously hadn't been used much or hadn't even been thought of. So we'll have a pretty wide-ranging discussion along with listening to bits of each of the 3 songs that the band has put out. I'm going to stop right there with my normal introduction and dive right in. Perhaps I'll just go around the board quickly and just have everyone introduce themselves. Let's start with Mike, and then we'll go to Jules and Danny, and then we'll start picking off with some discussion.
Mike Holtzman. I'm the songwriter and the guitarist in Bad Penny.
Jules?
Anything else I could tell you?
Yeah, in a moment. Yeah.
I'm Jules Rodino, and I'm the drummer with Bad Penny, also a hand model. So for you guys,
anybody needs that.
Good. Again, it's radio, but maybe for future reference, we'll put your email address in there, Jules. Thanks. And also, let's be clear, you were drummer for Blue Oyster Cult, and you have a significant background in the industry. Danny?
I'm Danny Miranda. I'm the bass player for Bad Penny.
Excellent. And also, these are pros, and we're going to dig in. Let me start right here, guys, with a question that seems pretty obvious. How did the band form? Although I said to Mike, really, the real question is, what on earth is going on here? Mike has a background in public relations and diplomacy and has become a rocker. Maybe I'll ask you to tell me how the band formed and how you guys came together.
Well, if I may, I don't think you become necessarily a musician suddenly. I mean, I've played my whole life. I was won the Battle of the Bands back in high school, and really had a lot of decision points in my life about going into music full time. And I'm really envious of Danny and Jules for really having made it their career. And, at times like this during COVID, it really challenges that decision because, these guys are professional touring musicians, recording musicians. There hasn't been as much work. But at the same time, it really takes a passion for music to do this day in and day out. And it wasn't for lack of having that passion, just I had other interests and they diverged. But I've always remained a songwriter. I've always played. And even if it just moved to the margins of my life, And what the pandemic did, and sort of on the upside, is that it afforded me the time to really focus on some of these songs that I had written or was thinking about writing. And more importantly, you have these fabulous musicians like Danny and Jules grounded, and for the first time in their adult lives, not on the road, not touring, not in a serious or intense recording situation. They were finishing up the new Blue Oyster Cult album, and they had the bandwidth to do this, and it just really came about through that serendipity. I don't believe it would have happened were it not for the lockdown, because these guys had that available time. And our singers, we're using two currently. One is Todd LaTourre, who's the full-time lead singer of Queensryche, one of the great prog metal bands in the world, and Steve O'Gerry, who of course was the lead singer of Journey. And these guys are in a similar situation. They had the bandwidth, they had the interest in doing something that was a little bit different perhaps than what they were accustomed to doing, and took that opportunity. So the band came together by that happenstance, and by having people between us who were able to introduce us all to each other.
Jules, you want to add anything, or Danny, to how this band came apart?
Go ahead, Jules.
Yeah, one of the I guess producers are on the, Brian Unger is involved in this, and he called me. I did a record for somebody, and he had told me about Mike, and I listened to the stuff, and Danny listened, and it was actually great. It was great stuff, and we were off, and like Mike was saying, the stars aligned. I know we're in this terrible time right now, but you got to kind of think outside of the box a little bit, and we were able to get together, and it's actually been magical, to be honest with you. It's just been a joy to play with these guys and to create, especially during this time.
Right, absolutely.
It begs that question before we get into some of your music and what you're doing with the songs, which is the state of music right now. And maybe Danny, I'll ask you. Musicians, as Mike said, are grounded throughout the industry, putting aside touring, even being around your colleagues and being in the studio environment. I'm curious, to ask you, and now, we're recording January 28th, 2021. This pandemic's been going for 10 months, whether the impact is as profound as it seems to have been on the creative arts generally and musicians. What's your reaction to that?
Well, the only thing I could look back to, the last weekend that BOC worked before the shutdown was in mid-March, early March, and I was flying home, and I ran into a friend of mine. He's a front of house guy for Foghat. Ran into him at the airport, and we're talking about, hey, they're talking about canceling some gigs and stuff, and he said, man, I hope the summer festivals aren't going to be blown out. And I said, what are you, nuts? That's 4 months away. It sounded so horrific. And now we're looking at, another year, really. We're looking at another year before things can get back up the way they were. I don't know what the word normal means anymore, because the word normal changes definition on a daily basis. But you're looking at a really, really slow return, and there's going to be a lot of battle scars, if you know what I mean. But on the other hand, I'm noticing from local gigs that I've done or feedback that I'm getting from people that there's a renewed appreciation and dare I say affection for the arts in general. People are tipping more, people are paying more attention, people are looking at that. Hopefully that'll stay. My hope is that it will, and that people will look at things on a broader basis. Not only the touring business, you're talking about, like I'm from New York City, Broadway is dead. So the tourism that Broadway brings to New York City is astronomical, and it's dead right now. So, maybe more people, even if you're into metal, go see a Broadway play, go see Shakespeare, go to an opera, go to a symphony, go to a blues bar, go support these things that are around us, but can somewhat seem invisible if it's not your bag, And that's what I'm hoping. I'm hoping it comes back with a vengeance. So
You've seen also, Danny, this Save Our Stages movement, which took a long time to get going, but it looks like there's a lot of money now that'll come out of Washington to support artists,
indeed.
performing artists, and that is really, it's very late in the game, I think, to support this community, but it's there nonetheless, and that's a very good sign.
Sure.
The other thing that was odd at the beginning of COVID, and this is to Danny's point about we'll be back on the road again in 4 months, is that there wasn't a lot of original music coming out early on in COVID, that people weren't necessarily taking advantage of home studios and making new music. In more recent months, I mean, the BOC album obviously dropped. You've also seen new music from Paul McCartney or a song from the Stones that was all recorded, in lockdown. You've seen a new album from AC/DC, who hasn't produced an album in years. Foo Fighters have a new record out. So you're seeing, people adjusting to this new reality, and I guess when you're creative, it's got to come out. And so once that set in, that shock Danny was talking about, people began to kind of revisit how you make music and continue to do it. And I would say that if the things that have sustained people during the pandemic, it's been music, it's been art, it's been films, it's been television, and it's been music. So it really showed its value. And I think the bigger tips Danny's describing and Save Our Stages is a recognition of, our need for art, whatever that is, whether it's heavy metal or Shakespeare.
Right. Yeah, I agree with Mike, because I've been involved with Save Our Stages on Long Island, and I did something for a club out in Patchogue. But yeah, Mike is absolutely right about that. I listen to a lot of public radio every day, and you'll hear so-and-so, oh, she's got a new record out. She recorded it during the lockdown. And every day I'm hearing from somebody, even if I've never heard of them, that they put out a record. Not that was recorded before the lockdown. Like, all right, what do we do now? Let's write some songs, either by myself, do it in my own house, get the band together, be safe. Like Mike's saying, the obvious, like AC/DC, Bruce Springsteen recorded his record before the lockdown, but you know what I mean?
Right.
And people are moving forward with that. I've been writing more in the last year than I have in the last half dozen years, without a doubt. I'm sure Mike has too, because you've got nothing but time. And it's just according to what are you going to do with your time? And maybe this will fold over too. We've got 10 months off, but what if we've got 2 days off? Now that things go back to normal, maybe make the most of your time instead of just, watching TV or something, making the most out of it, and from a creative way. And hopefully there'll be people out there waiting for it and looking for it.
It's Carpe Diem. We're chatting with Mike Holtz and Danny Miranda, right? And Jules Rodino of the band Bad Penny. Let me, before we talk about the band itself, I do want to press on this because it's so critical right now. Jules, I dabble with the drums. I'll go as far as that. But years ago, I practiced law in New York, and I took some lessons at the Drummers Collective with Mike Lauren, and I was very.
It's funny. I studied with Mike Lauren for years.
Is that right?
Oh, yeah, he's in Portugal now.
That's what I heard, and he opened up a music school or something.
Well, he was working for the university out there, and his tenure just ended. He did 20 years. But I studied with Mike for over 5 years, and we were very tight. And when he comes out from Portugal, we always grab a drink in the city.
Well, offline, I'll ask you to say hello to him. He may not remember me. I was just a lawyer that was taking some drummer lessons, but I learned a ton from him. But
He's great.
He was a wonderful man, and I'm so thrilled that he's had all the success since I last saw him, which, by the way, now we're going back about 20 years. But I would ask him about the state of the music industry 20 years ago. Because of the law that I did. I remember him saying to me that, and I'm asking you about drummers in particular, that even 20 years ago, the technology itself was making it hard for drummers to make a living, right? Drum machines literally were eliminating. I remember Mike telling me this, eliminating work for commercials and jingles and things like that. And I'm curious whether in following up on what Danny said, whether this pandemic in some ways has created new opportunities for drummers and other musicians in particular, in light of different opportunities and the fact that you can be at home and start recording music with your colleagues. Any reaction to that?
Yeah, absolutely. That's all valid points with the drum machines and the Linds back in the day. And, I guess they took away some work, but it's come full circle. And I think people identify. And when you hear a real drummer playing, I mean, the technology today, if you're doing a demo or something, and you can put on some great beats that on loops and stuff, and that's amazing. But now with this whole situation going on now, you can get any drummer you want to play on your record. So you can call me, you can call Steve Gadd, Greg Bissonette, and these guys are around. And if they have the capability, which most people do today, to record some stuff for you, they will. We want to play, all musicians, but drummers especially. We're not always at the forefront of writing and that whole bit. We're more the offensive linemen. We're the meat and potatoes of the band.
Yeah.
But we love to play, and we love to play with as many different artists and genres as we can. And during this time, it has opened up some doors where people, will shoot me an email and I can play a track for them and stuff like that. You talking about you studying with Michael Lauren, that also opened up video, Skype lessons, Zoom lessons. That's been tremendous. And I've been fortunate. I've been doing it for years anyway. But with this whole pandemic, it's even been tenfold on that, where you like right now we can be doing, I can give you, we could do Michael Lawrence Welcome to Odd Times book.
Right.
And we can be, rocking and rolling there. So yeah, I mean, yeah, with technology, with anything, you just have to adapt with it. And I think people want real drums, just like they want to buy real records and real vinyl.
Right.
They want real drummers.
Right. You're listening to KZSU-FM Stanford and Hearsay Culture. Let's turn towards your current gig here with Bad Penny. And Mike, maybe I'll just come back to you on this. What is the message of Bad Penny in this very fraught time?
I actually don't think it's necessarily a message band. The songs aren't particularly political. There's no, message per se, other than, the art will out, that this is going to happen. And, it's about persistence, and it's about adversity, and it's about, just making music despite these odds. It's been really great. I think, I speak for myself. I hope it's been for the other guys, but it's been really a great experience doing this. And, everyone does music in a way for themselves. You play it for others and you hope that they appreciate it. You hope that they like it. We've had a great response from the public, but at the end of the day, you're doing it because it makes you, you're digging the music, and it's about your expression. And so I think, if anything, the real message is, this happened during a really disastrous time in the world, and during a disastrous time for our country, during a disastrous time for our musicians. And yet this really cool thing came out of it. And I think if there is a message or a lesson, that's it.
Guys, you want anything on that front in terms of your involvement with the band and what you think the band brings to our music culture right now these days?
What I like about it is that, yes and no to what you were saying before. We kind of did record remotely for some of it, but us here, the three of us, recorded in the same room, all the backing tracks. So
is that right? Okay, all right.
That's really, it's rare, even pre-pandemic, in the interest of finances, location, this and that. So it's really cool. And I'll say, from a personal standpoint, and I'm sure Jules and Mike would agree with me, that we wouldn't have played the way we did if we had done it in our homes. It would have been great. But there's something chemically that goes on when people are in a room and you're feeling the impact of other people's instruments, and their souls are in the room too. That's the thing, their souls. It's not only just faces. So I think that's a really cool thing. And I think it shows because the tracks sound exciting to me when I listen to them, and I listened to them a million times. And I'm usually not very comfortable listening to something I played on after the fact for any length of time. And I really love this stuff. So that kind of organic relationship with people, I think should stick, and maybe it should be contagious.
If there's one thing that's a counterpoint, because I agree with everything Danny said. What's been fascinating is that there's been a lot of digital interplay on this music. We, do these things separated, but both vocalists did their parts remotely. And was a magic moment, basically, when I would send the guys the tracks, when Todd would, they would just hear the music that we recorded and the backing tracks, and maybe they didn't hear the guitar solo because I recorded my guitar solo digitally or at home. And so there's little bits and pieces that these guys hear that sort of fall out of the sky. But the most amazing stuff has been the vocals, because we've got these two incredible vocalists and they fly in their parts, and then the song becomes real and it just becomes a thing. And I was certainly blown away the first time I heard all of these tracks when it had those vocals over them. And it really was, like a magic. And the fact that those got flown in, that these guys listened to the band, and the band sounded very close and tight and a lot of energy, and they were able to perform with that and reflect that energy even though they weren't in the room with us. Todd is down in Florida and Steve is in Staten Island, and they flew their parts in and they made corrections digitally. They sent in a demo and then worked on it, and there is that kind of magic, but I think it's built around that core. We were very fortunate to get up to Woodstock together in 2 sessions and do basically the backing tracks together.
Agreed. Yeah. As soon as I got up there, I looked around, I met Mike for the first time, and this is going to be just fine. I just had a really, really good feeling about it. The studio too, it's an old church. It's got a lot of amazing character and soul, it's got its own kind of soul. So I really
great
feel
acoustics.
Yep.
Was this kind of a Big Pink kind of scenario? Like the band's famous album Music from Big Pink, where you needed that kind of special?
No,
you think, okay.
I don't remember who made the recommendation. I don't remember who among us, but Jerry Marotta, who's just, one of the great drummers of all time. Jerry, with Steely Dan and Peter Gabriel and all that stuff. It's his place. It's called Dreamland, and it's up in the Woodstock area. And it really is a dreamlike place. It's these cathedral vaulted ceilings, these incredible acoustics. We were careful and safe. We were all masked up in there and standing probably 20 feet apart from one another, and if not more, and isolated, but yet we were in this room together. So it had this magic to it that these amazing players had played there before. We got our work done pretty quickly. We ran through the songs only a few times and got a real rawness to it. But it was a really wonderful place. But I don't remember what the serendipity was, how we ended up there. It may have been Brian who recommended it, but we found it, and now it's kind of our spot.
Yeah, it's our magic spot.
Yeah.
Yep. It's a bit of the old and new too up there. Everything's all digital, but they've got a room full of old stuff: organs, Celeste, mellotrons, amplifiers. Remember guitar amplifiers? They look like a refrigerator and they got tubes in there, all that stuff, which is really, really cool. So it's the great marriage of the old and the new.
Yeah, for sure.
We're chatting with Mike Holtzman, Danny Miranda, and Jules Rodino on KZSU-FM, Stanford and Hearsay Culture, discussing the new band Bad Penny. You know what I'll do, guys? We're going to take a short PSA break in a few minutes, but I think it'd be fun to at least play one of your songs now. Maybe we could talk about it, and then we'll double back after the break on some other stuff. Let me start off with, your song Mirror, which I understand, and Mike, before we play a little bit of it, I understand it's a bit of a tribute to the late Eddie Van Halen.
Well, a bit. The song came together, really, I wrote it for Todd, because we had one single come out that did very well called Voices in My Head. And Todd, who's got this great operatic voice and incredible range, incredible power, really had to sing to the song. And it was an adjustment for him. And he did a brilliant job with it. And he lets loose towards the end of the track. But it was really about discipline for him and singing in a kind of slightly different model. And we wrote The Mirror Lies really with him in mind, as a way for him to show some of that breadth, and also to be, it has some roots in some familiar music. It sounds a little bit like Black Sabbath. It sounds a little bit like Iron Maiden. It sounds a little bit like this and that. I love the song, but I left the guitar solo open. And as I was writing the song, it was when Eddie Van Halen passed away. And I said, it would be kind of cool if I can figure out a way to weave into the song something that was in his style, which was an inimitable style. It's called tapping, where you playing on the fretboard with multiple fingers, and it creates this kind of real ambient effect, a really cool effect that was his signature sound. And I was able to do that in my own way. So I think it was my way of being an homage to Eddie Van Halen, because it was really in my mind at that time that we'd lost this giant and someone who was very influential to me. And I wanted to be able to somehow reflect some of that energy and innovation that he used in that guitar solo. So in particular, it's that guitar solo that it's really reflected in.
Let's play a little bit of the song Mirror, Bad Penny's tune.
She said her love for me would never die. That all changed when she found out about you and I. But her love's insane, wouldn't hurt her if she knew. Sometimes it gets too much. I need to feel her touch.
You know, I know it's sacrilege to stop a band's song like that, such as radio. We have the rhythm section here, and Jules, I'll ask you whether you're okay with me calling the bass and the drum the rhythm section. But I'm curious, you know, that's a really driving beat, and one that, you know, I think propels a song along. How do you, you know, maintain, and this is more of a broad question, particularly for non-musicians, how do you maintain that drive for multiple minutes with that kind of, you know, beat that has to really keep revving up, and the song as it goes on really does kind of, you know, have a crescendo to it?
Yeah, well, first of all, you know, it's just such a great song that Mike wrote, and it's just I loved playing on it. And in the demo version that he had, the drums are similar, and I was just asking him, you know, what do you want me to do here and there? And another, you know, what makes this band just so much fun is that he takes the chains off and just says, you know, you're the drummer, you know, you do what you want to do. And they guide me a little bit, but we took like the two best bars of what we could, you know, what we thought would make the band really drive. And I think it works great. It's really not that hard when a song is that good, and I'm playing with Danny, and we're just chugging along, man. We're just hitting it hard, and it just the song speaks for itself, and you're excited to play. You know, you're just excited to play the tune. So, in terms of keeping the momentum going, that's easy on a song
Not
like
too difficult.
that.
And I should have, you know, Mike alluded to it, but I mean, you know, Jules and Danny, you guys have played together, you know, for a while with Blue Oyster, and maybe I should just set that up as well. How long have you guys known each other as musicians?
I don't know,
Long
Danny,
time.
how long? Yeah.
We did our first project in 1991, right? Remember, we played with that weird Canadian hockey player.
Marshall or something?
Yeah. We've known each other a long time, but you know, every once in a while we kind of do a gig here and there. But when Jules joined the band, and I was still kind of playing with them off and on while I was with Queen or whatever, but we've been playing together quite a while, but steadily, I'd say at least the last dozen years, give or take,
at least,
right?
Yeah. And yeah, at least.
And we're neighbors too, so you know.
Oh, yeah, I was going to say, I mean, I think we've all got kind of, you know, the New York roots and the New York connections, even though I'm in Greensboro because I grew up north of New York City in Ossining.
Right on.
You know, so you know the area. Let me ask you one last question before I take our break, guys. You know, Jules and Danny. So, you know, there's a lot of synergy, right, that has to occur, particularly between a bassist and a drummer, and more or less in any band, and not just in rock. And I'm curious whether, you know, we make too much of that, right? In a sense that, you know, particularly as professionals, is it fair to say that you can drop in and out of different arrangements and different bands and have that kind of gelling that Mike referred to? Or on the other hand, is there really something about playing together for a long time with people so you know what their methods are and what their ways of doing things? Jules, you want to respond to that?
I think if you're a pro, you can pretty much drop in with other players at a level, but then to take it to the next level, like I've been playing with Danny for so long. I know his instincts. I know his feel more than anything. And we can get pretty slinky and we can groove pretty hard, you know, when especially if we're playing a few shows together and we're dialed in. But as a pro, you want to be able to play in any situation and make it sound good, but to really take it to the next level. I mean, you know, yeah, playing with Danny for all these years, I think we do that.
You can totally tell that, by the way. I mean, there's one of my favorite bands is The Who, and I reference The Who often. But Entwistle didn't like playing with Keith Moon. He liked Kenny Jones because they gelled better, and it allowed one of them. You know, you had 4 lead instruments in The Who, you know, and it all to me worked beautifully because the chaos was beautiful. But to them, it was always hard to find your place in a band that had that much chaos. And I think with these two, just my experience with them and listening to the BOC records and how they've played here, there is that familiarity and there's a professionalism, but there's also this kind of you know, a knowledge of where each other's space is in these songs, and it really comes out as well. And these songs all seem to have really good bass lines and great drum grooves, and it just gels really nicely with these two guys.
You're listening to KZSU-FM Stanford and Hearsay Culture. KZSU is a nonprofit, non-commercial radio station at Stanford University that requires donations from listeners like you to continue its diverse programming. You have a couple of ways to make a donation to KZSU. You can email our underwriting department at underwriting@kzsu.stanford.edu or go to our webpage and click on donate. Regardless, particularly in this time of pandemic where KZSU has really quite valiantly been staying on the air, now would be a good time, as the guys were saying earlier, to support not only, you know, radio and music, but also particularly nonprofit radio stations like KZSU. So guys, let me, I want to play your other 2 songs in a moment. But, you know, focusing, you know, on this big picture and in the trends in the industry, you know, it was prior to COVID that, you know, we saw, you know, the change in terms of revenue within the business going to, you know, pay what you would like for songs and to touring itself. But of course, touring, right, only is available to a certain very elite sector of musicians like Danny and Jules and really, you know, Mike. And I'm curious, you know, what you say to everyone else right now, right? Looking at this market right now where you've got COVID, which hopefully will end, plus, right, all the challenges of generating revenue on the internet, and we can get into that as well. What do you say to someone who wants to go your route, right, and take this plunge into the rock and roll life in light of all of these challenges? It's easier to say do it, right? But of course, if you have to pay bills, that's rather hard. So
I'm gonna let these guys take that question, but I'm just gonna say one thing, that our first single, Voices in My Head, was streamed 163,000 times on Spotify, and we've made enough off of that I can probably take Danny out for a hamburger. But not Jules. But not Jules.
Exactly.
He can't come.
Right. And Mike, let's just say that number again. How many downloads?
160,000 plus on that one song.
160,000 plus buys you, and I know you're kidding around a little bit, but not much, right? Buys a hamburger.
No, it's literally not enough certainly not to produce the music. And so you're running into that kind of problem that the music industry is still dominated, despite the revenue models, not dominated by streams, which is where the audience is. The audience is streaming. The money comes out of touring, which no one can do. It comes from traditional, you know, what we consider to be record sales or iTunes sales. And that's just not where the people are going. The people, you know, are going towards streams now, and streams just aren't enough to make it happen. So it really is, you know, an all the above model. I think if people want to make it, they got to build a following the old fashioned way on the road and play and get people excited, because you make more off of that merchandise and touring revenues. And then you do get some through sales, but it's really, it's really tough. I mean,
I'd say become an accountant.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it's, you know, what Mike said is true. You may know more than me. The streaming thing is kind of like radio, where nobody really got really rich from radio play, but because they sold adverts, commercials, it was paying for itself more. And from what I understand is that the streaming thing, if you're not a subscriber, it's almost as if your vote doesn't count. And you guys may know more than I do. So a lot of people that listen to the streaming channels aren't subscribing. Everything I listen to, I pay for, whether it's streaming or public radio. There's about 4 or 5 radio stations that I contribute to, even during the lockdown, because I listen to them 24/7. But it's also the thing is people one day decided that they should have everything for free, music, movies, and disposable. Because when I grew up, the new Zeppelin record came out. The only reason I would make a cassette copy from a friend is because maybe I didn't have the money to get it yet. But as soon as I had $5, I'm going to go buy it. Now it's like, you know what? It's good enough. I'll stream it. I'm going to be sick of it in 2 weeks anyway. So it's not a thing that has a prolonged relationship for as many people, unfortunately. So it's more disposable, and that's unfortunate. That's why you gotta bang them on the ticket prices now. That's why Elton John's $400 to see him live, because he shouldn't be selling 50,000 records. He should be selling 10 million records.
Right. Jules, you want to add on that based on your experience?
I mean, you better love it if you're gonna go into this business. You gotta love it. I mean, but just like Mike and Danny pointed, it's a tough business. Even if I don't even know what kind of business model it is, you just have to you gotta love it.
There's a lot of reasons to miss the days of the record album. I miss it because as an art form, I liked the LP, I liked the liner notes, I liked the jacket, I liked seeing the pictures of the band, I liked reading the credits and the lyric sheets, and that was part of that experience. That it was a sonic experience, but it was also very tactile. And the whole industry's moved off of that model where no one cares if you're putting out an album. It's really about a single, and it's a disposable, sort of commodity. And there's so much volume now. One of the great things about home studios is that everyone can make music. One of the bad things about music is that everyone can make music. And there's a flood of this stuff, and it leads to that dispensability of it. And it pushes prices down. It pushes the value of putting together a consistent record down. Vinyl's coming back, but it's really a nostalgic thing. I'm not really seeing it coming back in a way that it could sustain the business like it used to. It used to be that you toured to support a record. Now you put out a record to support a tour. It's a whole different kind of business now. And it's not really geared towards the artist. It's geared really against the artist.
You're right. And you would hope, as I've been alluding to, that technology can level the playing field a little bit, at least to the extent that folks can get together and don't have to rent space. But as you pointed out, that isn't the same thing either. So we have a long way to go on this front. Let me turn to another one of your songs, "Voices in My Head," which is quite different, by the way, than the first song we just played. Mirror Lies. Does anyone want to introduce that one before we play a little of it?
Mike?
This was the first single that we did together. I did a demo of it in a lockdown house and got sort of a very rudimentary bass line and drum line together, and kind of had this idea for a song about, this whole country kind of, basically we're talking to ourselves after so many months. The lyrics came actually very easy about, just kind of this strange altered state we all found ourselves in. And again, it's not a message song. It just really what was driving it. And, like I do with every song, I go to these two guys and said, well, who do you think should sing this? Who should we get on vocals? And what's funny is Todd, to this day, who I consider to be one of the really great rock vocalists of all time. The guy's just phenomenal and incredible range. And he's really interested in pushing his own envelope and not recording the same kind of music all the time. He jumped at the chance to do it and really was kind of aping my vocal when he did it. Mine had kind of a Soundgarden, Eddie Vedder kind of thing going on. And he found himself, rather than, trying to make it something it wasn't, to say, I'm going to do what you do, but much better, which is exactly what he did. The song really surprised us. It came out of the gate and hit the activator charts, on media-based activator charts at number 76. So it entered the charts really high for a band that really, was coming off the gate, and just people liked it. It was new rock and roll. There was no rock and roll on the charts, and it just kept kind of going. And by the time the song peaked at 39, it was just really exciting to hear it. And again, it's a different song and a different energy level than the Mirror Lies. But I think, again, what this project is about is exercising different muscles, trying to, relate to some of the influences that all the band has, both in classic rock and metal, and as you'll hear and Lose Myself, more in pop, or I don't know what you call that. It's sort of like a power ballad, I guess, that we all kind of grew up on with bands like Journey. So each one of these has a bit of a different signature to it, and this one, is sort of a classic, hard rock song with a pretty catchy little chorus.
Let's hear Voices in My Head, Bad Penny song.
Know what you're doing everything. Know what you're thinking, that's the key. Inside your head, yeah, some things are better left unsaid.
To me, I was hearing tinges, and it's terrific. I was hearing tinges of Billy Joel there, kind of Glass Houses, sleeping with the television on and that kind of thing. His effort, speaking of Long Island, by the way, his effort to try to break into that space. Guys, Danny and Jules, again, a different sound than the first song, a very different than Lose Myself that we'll play in a moment. How did you shift gears on that, or was it a shift of gears for you in doing a song along those lines?
Wasn't a big shift of gears. I mean, they're great songs, and when they're great songs, they're easy to play to, and they're fun to play to. And I think all three of these are just, they all have their little different styles and nuances, but they're three great songs that easy to play to and just a lot of fun.
That was the first song we recorded too, back in the spring, late spring. So yeah, we kind of started it out rocking. So we hit the ground running on that. And the songs that Michael gives us is just ready made for us. It makes it easy. It's great. Yeah,
absolutely.
Well,
at the end of the day, it's all about the song.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And I'll ask you guys, this is kind of a, a common question, but it's so important. You say what makes a great song, and of course, a hit. But in your view, what makes a great song particularly when you're coming in and you're being handed the music? What defines it?
I'm a sucker for a great hook.
Yeah.
To me, I love a great riff, but it's got to have a great hook. I'm just a sucker for pop. Not that these are pop songs, but you got to be able to sing something back. And
all three of them do.
Yeah, and Michael was talking about Eddie Van Halen. His guitar playing had hooks in it. Even before David Lee Roth started singing, there was like 5 hooks going on. So I'm a sucker for great hooks. So I wound up singing the songs and waking up singing Michael's songs, going, what the hell's going on here? I can't get it out of my head. So that's a good sign. So
Jules, you want to add anything on that?
No, Danny hit it right on the head. Yeah.
I think they don't realize they're great though until you hear it, and there's some part of it where it's in your head, and I think it's a good song, and the validation really comes when you walk out of the studio like we did, and you hear Danny and Jules, and then you go, wow, this is a great song. Whatever I heard in my head, they've made it better. They've improved upon it, but it does start with that little hook and groove, but there's also something, I think, magic that happens when in the execution, and you can feel the guys' enthusiasm and how much we're enjoying each of the songs. They're very, very different songs, but they each have, I think, a really strong core to them, a strong hook to them that I felt had potential, but you don't realize it until you heard it and you go, holy shit, this is really, you're driving in your car and you turn it up. And I remember one night Jules called me, I guess you were in your car, Jules, when you got like one of the final mixes of the Mirror Lies. Yeah. And I remember where you were, and you're just like, he's heard it 100 times, but you heard it in some different context. And he's just like, this song is awesome, and it's just because it's there, it's finally realized.
Yeah, I heard it on my speakers in my car. I remember. It was
what we do is a rhythm section. We're sidemen. And our job is to serve the song, not serve ourselves. So when somebody like Mike gives us a great song, we want to make it even better. you know, and not like, how can I shine? How can we serve the song? How can we bring out that great melody, that really great guitar part? And once you realize your place and the weight that your place holds and how much of an impact you can make in improving it, it raises the bar for everything else. And then you got a guy like Todd, he's got a finished track and he's just smoking all over it. It's as if he was in the room with us.
Yeah,
He's just destroying it, you know.
Absolutely.
It's great.
And that was going to be my question too. You know, Mike, maybe as a songwriter, I'll ask you. I mean, did it come out the way you envisioned it? You know, how much do the musicians, you know, have the latitude to make changes, or put it differently, right? Are these the songs you envisioned?
They are, and I think to different extents. Lose Myself is the biggest example of, you know, there's so many things happening in that song. There's orchestral parts, there's live strings being played, there's Steve's voice. There's only so much that you can hear in your own mind. And Danny's, you know, bass line in that song is gorgeous. If you just listen to what he's doing back there, it does serve the song, but it also really elevated the song and gave it its own kind of, you know, propulsion. And it's a beautiful bass line in a song that's a ballad. I didn't even hear it. I think in the demo, I just thumped along with the chords and just to give him an idea of where the song was going. But that as a finished product was, you know, like sort of a revelation. The other songs, you know, had a simpler kind of structure to them, I think, where it's a guitar riff. But just to give an example of what Danny was talking about, I wrote a rudimentary bass line underneath Voices in my head. And we sat down in the studio and Danny had this little thing he does, a little trill, like a riff on the bass line that really changed the bass line, but gave it such an energy and a groove to it. And he put a little fuzz on it and said, you know, let's try this. And I wanted to give these guys all the latitude to do those kind of things. Those are beyond what I hear. I can hear the core of the song and it's got its melody, it's got its basic structure. But in terms of those nuances that these guys brought to it, there's a piece in The Mirror Lies where Jules slows it down. He slows the beat down basically. And he says, Mike, you only get away with that once. You can only do that once in a song. But it has such a profound effect on the song. It doesn't deflate the energy. It actually added to it. But that's all from him. That's from his experience, knowing what would work there, not to overplay it. But I like giving them enough room to run. And same thing with Todd and Steve. The vocal lines, I'm limited as a vocalist. And when you put a song like that, like especially The Mirror Lies in Todd LaTorre's hands, I mean, that guy just destroyed it. I mean, it's like Bruce Dickinson and Rob Halford and Ian Gillan. It is all like our heroes. And he just did things that I wouldn't have thought of. And it's that kind of magic, I think, that everyone's kind of grooving off the same thing and they made it better. So these things all achieve something different than when I laid down the demo, but none more so, I think, than Lose Myself, the ballad, because it was written on a piano, and by the time you still hear the piano, but it's now a really lush and more orchestrated song. And once Steve Augeri's voice hit it, you know, the song just, you know, takes off.
Well, let's play Lose Myself, which is dropping on January 29th when the show is airing on KZSU-FM Stanford. Again, we are chatting with Danny Miranda, Mike Holtzman, and Jules Berdino of the new band Bad Penny. Here is their song, piece of Lose Myself.
I'd lose myself to find you. I would give up all I had. I would follow you, a blind man, and cover up my way back. I lose it all to win you. I would give my good life for back. Myself to hear you, and know myself to feel again. Any day
Mike, would you take it as a compliment if I said to you that if you had said to me without knowing this was Bad Penny, that it was Journey, that you really hit the nail on the head with that sound? Or on the other hand, are you going for something different? I mean, obviously there's a signature voice there, but again, the ballad and emotion is very Journey-esque. Do you take that as a compliment, or do you say, no, we're trying to do something else here?
No, it's a huge compliment. I mean, come on, nobody wrote songs like Journey, that type of music, especially during that era. And there's a reason why I went to Steve O'Jerry with it, because it was that voice that I heard in my head as I was writing the piano chords. However, that being said, I was really pushed to not. I originally had a guitar solo in there that kind of aped Neil Schon. Like I was going to play this really explosive, fast guitar solo. And then it was Brian and then Tony Bruno who ended up finalizing the production on, who said, no, slow this down, get more bendy, get more beatly, more arpeggios during the choruses. And so it took on a bit more of its own life. But again, all that stuff really was meant to serve the song. What would sound best? And nobody did this better than Journey. So in my view, that's a great compliment, but it does have this kind of signature. This is a brand new gang, the three of us. And, we're discovering, what works, and we're pretty much playing things that we like. And these are songs in different genres that are kind of just in my head, but there's definitely a signature sound emerging in there. And even though this is a very different track than the previous two that we heard, I think I'm trying to definitely find that space that makes it its own, a Bad Penny track where you go, I know that band, I know that sound.
We have a few minutes left, and we're chatting again with Danny Miranda, Jules Rodino, and Mike Holtzman of the band Bad Penny. Let's talk a little bit about the future, and we've done that a bit. So I'll ask the question up front, obviously, which is, you've got 3 tracks here. Mike just alluded to more. What's in store for Bad Penny? What can we look forward to aside from the Lose Myself that's dropping tomorrow?
Well, it depends on which one of us you ask. My hope is we get as much of the music out during this period of lockdown as possible, so that we have more of a body of work, and that enables you to make some more decisions and think about things. What I expect will happen is, these guys are going to hit the road hard once they're able to. But everyone's at different places in their lives. And if any one of these songs were to really break the band, and we have an opportunity, I, for one, would love to get out there and test drive some of these songs live. And maybe that's, at a festival or somewhere where these bands are both on the same stage. Queensryche and BOC have played on the same stage before. So maybe that's an opportunity for this band to kind of roll out and see what we can do. But, I know, the mission and the purpose of this was never to say, let's create a permanent band, we're just doing a brand new thing. It was really meant to be a project, but in my mind, it's taken on a life of its own, because the songs are coming out so strong. It's coming so easily to us. There's not a lot of heavy lifting here. People are reacting very, very favorably to it. I mean, the first song out of the gate, charted, and that's really exciting. So, I think the future is choose your own adventure. We get to choose what we want to do.
I would love nothing more than to play live with this band. I really would. You don't know what it's, when you get called to do a session, you don't know if it's going to be a one-time thing. And I remember leaving there going, this can't stop. We got to keep doing this. It feels like a real, everything that you love about being in a band, this is, even though we haven't played a show. So,
I'm not the band manager, Jules, but do you agree? Do you agree?
100%. This is, I love these guys and this band. And, another Michael Lauren reference, when I was studying with him, he said, at the end of the day, you wind up playing with your friends. And that's what this feels like.
Right. And to that point,
if you're lucky.
Yeah, well, exactly. And that's kind of, what I want to close on. Everyone here has talked about the love for music. And as an educator, when I work with my students, I told my first year law students yesterday, focus on what you love. Life is short. And if you love this, great. And I do. But if you don't, there are other opportunities out there. Even in the midst of COVID, that seems to be a message that, we sometimes forget and really need to hear. Danny Miranda, Jules Rodino, Mike Holtzman, 3 of the members of the new hard rock supergroup Bad Penny. You can find more about the band at badpennyband.com. Is there anywhere else, guys, that you'd recommend that, people look, aside from hopefully, listening to radio and certainly listening on January 29th?
You can see us on Facebook. We got a pretty active presence there. All the music is there with some little insights into the band, and it's a pretty good, well-maintained site. So that's just Bad Penny on Facebook. And then there's Bad Penny Official on Instagram, where you can see some images from some of the studio sessions and behind the scenes stuff. So those are our main platforms.
Terrific. Jules, Danny, Mike, thanks for joining me today on Hearsay Culture, talking through the creative process during COVID, playing some really terrific music. I loved it, and I'll be paying attention to what else comes forward. But for now, thank you for helping make our world more enjoyable to be in, particularly Danny and Jules, over a period of, an incredible amount of time. And you were quite modest, I would say, in what you have done in the industry between Blue Oyster Cult and Queen and others. So thank you for being here today.
Pleasure to be here. Thank you.
Thanks, Dave.
Thank you for pushing us. Thank you.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun. Thanks.
On Hearsay Culture, we're going to be looking at more opportunities to really delve quite broadly into what society brings us. We're going to be having on the show a few folks focusing on holographic technology. We're going to have other people on discussing the state, really, of electoral politics. I'm very excited about that. But mostly, we're just going to continue focusing heavily in the direction of broadening a listenership that is quite conversant in the important issues of our time. KZSU, as you know, being a nonprofit station, means that it continues needing donations, but also, again, I encourage you to pay attention, as the guys just said, to supporting the arts and supporting music and theater and other areas where it's direly needed. As always, you can listen to KZSU live at 8 p.m. Pacific time on Fridays on KZSU.live.stanford.edu. You can also pick up the show on Stitcher and iTunes and everywhere else. I welcome your comments, suggestions, feedback, directions that you'd like the show to go by emailing me at dave@hearsayculture.com. Otherwise, thank you so much for listening today. Please stay tuned to KZSU for more diverse programming, and have a good evening.